A very warm welcome to this World Game Changers podcast, where your host, Paul D. Lowe, embraces many crucial conversations that compassionately contribute towards creating a better life and world. Paul's intention's very simple: to help get people's inspirational insights and motivational messages out into the world, so others may benefit.
Hello listeners, and welcome to this World Game Changers podcast episode. Today we are joined by a returning guest, a lady from Denver in Colorado in the United States of America, a lady by the name of Jenn Junod. Jenn, a very warm welcome back to you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It's been definitely a journey to get to this point, so I'm excited about what we're diving into today.
It's only a short one, listeners. It's only a short one, as these 15-minute episodes are, but hang on to your hats because it's deep and it's going to be powerful. I can promise you that. And I suppose to set us on the road, it's probably best to frame it and suggest that Jenn has very bravely, courageously agreed to talk about something that really seriously happened to her, which I think it's fair to say sets most people back, if not for the rest of their life, then certainly for the foreseeable future. Jenn, is that enough? I don't kind of want to put words around this. Is that enough for you to come in on this and you take it away? Because I want this to come from your heart, your words. It's your story and it's your truth.
I appreciate that, and I think that's a great way to set it up. I was sexually abused as a child from the ages of 8 to 10, and then also raped at the age of 17. And as you were saying about like getting through and the bravery on the other side, there's still times that I personally still struggle with what I went through, and it's been one incident has been 25 years ago, and one incident is almost 20 years ago. And it's the biggest thing that I would want anybody to know is it doesn't matter when it happened. If we worked so hard on either bearing the issue, overcompensating the issue, or, basically never dealing with it, that there's a time and a place for all of us to work through it, even if it comes back again and again, because recovery is not a linear journey. It is something that I feel like I get through it and I'm doing great. And then it could be a few weeks or a few years later that I'm like, oh, I got to deal with that. I don't want to, but I do.
So is it fair to say then, Jenn, on something as challenging, and let's use that kind of word which doesn't even begin to scratch the surface, but something as challenging as what you're describing, it's an ongoing journey. There's not a one size fits all, we've reached the destination, we're done and dusted and we're in the clear now. It doesn't work that way, does it?
No, I like to think of it and working through my past trauma, which, if for those who want to hear a bit more about my own journey, like check out the previous episode, because we need to definitely dive in just this one. Yet I always see it as like a tour bus, or if you think of, the London buses, which I love, the double deckers, or, the older buses from like the 50s or 60s. I always kind of picture one of those that I go to the destination and I feel like I've worked on it, and yet I'll move on to another destination, another stop, and I realize that I have to go back one stop before I can go forward one stop. For example, that I really want to present is I was promiscuous for a very long time, looking to be loved, because I thought that's what it meant to be loved, was to be intimate with someone. And it wasn't until I was almost 30 that I finally found a very healthy relationship, that I started working through a lot of these issues that I was having. And by what I mean by that is I never felt worthy. So I kept going to relationships that were very toxic, that would take advantage of me, that were gaslighting or with narcissists. And I always felt like I was putting in so much, and then I would be burnt out on the relationship or realize that after a few years that they are treating me horribly and get out. And it wasn't until I started working on my own self-worth that I found a good relationship. And that being said, we've been together almost 5 years. In the last 2 years, I've really struggled with working through this trauma, in the fact of, for the rape, I told this guy no, and I was incredibly drunk. I fell asleep, and I woke up to him taking advantage of me. And it's the type of thing that to this day, sometimes my body goes into fight or flight mode or freeze. And there's been times where my partner now, who is an incredible human, who just when he goes to like cuddle with me in the morning, there's been times where I freeze because it's when I first wake up and there's someone touching me. And it's the type of thing that I have gone to group therapy sessions, and recently within the last few months that I had to leave early because listening to everyone else's stories, that they were in the last 6 months, they were in the last few years. And I'm like, I'm dealing with this trauma from like 20 years ago. And it's because, as you said, these are things that affect us lifelong. And it's our choice to be responsible about how we react and how we move through it.
And there isn't a scientific formula, as you say. There isn't a linear path to that, is there? Is it? That sort of, it's just all over the place, isn't it? But I think if we've got the awareness, I mean, obviously I can't speak about the specifics of a rape experience. Maybe I can come very close, but that's another time, another story. I'm going to ask you your thoughts about this, Jen. So, okay, listeners, I'm going to dive in and share something I've never ever shared before on air, and this came to me less than a year ago. So I was with a friend, a very close friend, and we were sitting outside where I used to live as a child. And I was pointing out, this is blah, 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 so-and-so lived there and so-and-so lived there. And I was just talking the way you and I are talking now, Jen. And I said, oh, yeah, and that's where my sexual abuse took place, in that house there. And I said it almost like, yeah, and, tomorrow it's going to rain. Mm-hmm. And I think I'll go to the shop and buy a pint of milk. It was almost, it's like, and she said to me, what did you just say? Now, this person knows me very, very, very well, very closely. She said, what did you just say? I said, and I repeated it. She said, you've never said that before. And in many respects, I mean, I'm going back to childhood, Jen. In many respects, it was, for me, it was like, well, what's all the fuss about? And I'm turning the clock back when that statement was made, probably turning the clock back 50 years, probably a touch more. So I'm just interested in your thoughts about what some might say, had it been suppressed, or had it kind of been dealt with, inverted commas? Because I feel, even now, the way I'm talking about it, it's like, and I'm certainly not trivialising this, the most grotesque act, in my humble opinion, that is rape. I am absolutely not condoning, trivialising. Hopefully I'm not coming across as insensitive. But for me, Jen, and mine was sexual assault, at that age of 7. Yeah, around 7. But I've kind of since reflected on that and thought, well, and? Any thoughts on any of that?
First off, thank you for sharing. It's definitely something that I had a guest on my show, a musical act with two individuals. With their act is called Vibrations, and one of the guests, Pink Panther, they mentioned that there's a difference between authenticity and vulnerability. Authenticity is being open to sharing what you just said, and vulnerability is talking about how you feel about it. So, for example, I can talk about all the shit that I've gone through: solitary confinement, physical abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, rape, self-harm, suicide attempts, death of a friend, marriage, divorce, abortions. Like, I can tell them all in bullet points. Very authentic. I'll share it with anyone. Yet where I'm very have been very detached and go in and out is being detached from feeling about any of these things. And that's actually how I got through a lot of what I went through, was detaching myself to the situation where I knew they happened. I could tell you about them. I could tell you some of the experiences about them, yet I would never talk about how they made me feel because I was so detached. I didn't know how they felt. Yet through therapy, through self-development courses, through being in a healthy relationship now, I have found that I feel disgusting at times because I think about it. I
Mm.
feel like when my partner touches me at times, even jokingly, I feel like somebody is attacking me and going to force themselves on me. I feel that if somebody touches me, not in an inappropriate way, but in passing, like if I'm on, in the tube or on the L or a subway, a train, an airplane, any type of public transit, that if somebody touches me, just like because they're sitting next to me, I'm on high alert because I don't know what they'll do next. When so many other individuals don't even notice that the person next to them is touching them. And it's the type of thing that it's listening to these feelings that are making me go, okay, I know I've been through things, so at some point I'll need to dig deeper and go back to the root of it. And the last thing I'll say about that is there's a book called The Body Keeps the Score. And there's been a lot of research around that trauma, specifically as we're growing up, and the ages of, I believe, 6 to 10 are around the ages that children start to realize what sexuality is, that they are just like discovering their bodies. It's also a very, very formative years that when we go through trauma, our body does keep the score. We could have, yes, it could be depression or anxiety or those type of things. It can also lead to autoimmune diseases. It can lead to, our body just not digesting as well. It can lead to so many other things because our body is harboring these feelings that are happening to us. And research has shown how our emotional and mental state can really affect our physical state.
What a fascinating topic, listeners. I'm sure we could dive down on this and we could literally be on this for hours and hours, if not
Mm.
days. It could just go on and on and on, couldn't it? Jen, I want to pause it there, if I may,
Mhm.
and just ask you one. We've done the elevator lift, 30 seconds. In 30 seconds till we get to the next level in the elevator, your piece of advice to a stranger in that elevator with you that's just overheard this podcast, and they'll say, Jen, incredibly brave, thank you so much. give me one piece of advice, what would that be, Jen?
To be kind and curious to yourself, because these feelings, when we hate them, when we try to push them away, they're just going to leave them there. There are times where I still get very upset and I let myself sit through them. And when others around me are like trying to be like, what's wrong? What's wrong? Just letting them know, hey, I'm getting these feelings right now. I just need to work through them and not suppress them. Because what happens when I'm curious about them, when I feel through them, do they suck? Yes. I won't sugarcoat it there. Yet, if I'm not suppressing it, I won't freak out about spilt milk because my emotions aren't attached to the spilt milk. They're attached to something I went through, something that it's reminding me of, something that has happened to me. So when I take these moments when it comes up to feel my way through them, I am able to handle the rest of life a lot better, and I can learn about myself and grow to be able to help myself through these things. So for anyone that needs a little bit of advice is just be kind and curious to whatever you're going through and the thoughts in your heads and your feelings.
Beautiful advice. Profoundly beautiful. Jen, just share with us, by way of closing out, just share with us your contact details, will you please?
Yeah, definitely. My podcast is called Shit You Don't Want to Talk About, and you can find me anywhere on Linktree. So that's linktr.ee/shit, the number 2, talk about. Or you can find me on Twitter as myself, Jenn Junod. That is JENNJUNOD. And I appreciate your time today. And I know that your audience grows and learns so much by your podcast. And I really appreciate that you put that out in the world.
Thank you, Jen. All that remains now on that very, very poignant conversation, listeners, is to sign off the way I always do by saying, remember, the world's changing. How will you respond?
Thanks very much for listening to this World Game Changers podcast episode. Hopefully you found it interesting and helpful. Drop a line to paul@worldgamechangers.org with any thoughts or questions you may have, and he'll be more than happy to respond. Remember, the world is changing. How will you respond?